One, I'd like to thank everybody for giving your time to the Budget Committee for the Fulton City School District as we develop our 22-23 budget. It's hard to believe. It feels like we just did this. Here we are again. It's an exciting year. I think you'll hear some things throughout this process. Normally, this time of year, we're talking about, gee, we're short from the state and this and that. This year, it's a great opportunity. Our increase in our revenues, normally it's coming in around 5 to 800,000 at this point in time, normally with the first run. And this year it came in at a little over $2 million, $2,001,000. And if you take our community set aside out, which is our community schools money and a lot of support programs, it's always been there. It's about a $1.6 million increase. So, or about 4.5%. So this is a year opportunity wise, where as you go through this process, really want you thinking about, some of the things and asking questions about, what are the things that are going well here in the district? What are things that you believe that you're hearing out in the community? I think one of the pieces of a budget committee is really providing us eyes and ears and opportunities for us to really hear about what's going on, the real experiences out there on the front lines. What are our families experiencing? What are our children experiencing? And I think that's where your input is really essential to help us. I was just with Donna over at the senior night, and we were celebrating large group of seniors and, recognizing the experiences that they've had over the last 4 years, which have been very unique and different, but also the programs that we've developed over the last 6 years. I can only speak to that, but you hear about early college high schools, at the secondary level, 2 of them, 2 more than any other high school in this county. And then you go down to our primary children, and our teachers are trained in some of the state-of-the-art reading and the science of reading at the other end of the continuum. And I think when you look at both ends and you realize what we're doing in the middle as we're coming up through, there's some really great things going on here in Fulton. But that's also, we're only where we're at now. We want to really develop some great things over time. And I think some more things that you'll hear about, hopefully starting this evening, will be the federal aid money. We've gotten $14 million in one-time monies. Wow, that's amazing. What educator wouldn't think that $14 million is absolutely amazing? And, for me, I always temper that with capacity and sustainability. So those are 2 words that I'd like you to really think about, as you're going through this process and participating and thinking about these things outside the meetings. It's really about how do we ensure what we're creating now and those things that are going to be essential for us are part of who we are 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years from now. That's we'll know that we developed a budget that gave us a shot in the arm. It provided the opportunity to fill in the gaps. It provided the opportunity to develop our infrastructure. And then our general budget, which is what we're talking about over the next couple of months, that's the fuel that keeps it going. One-time money is great, but it's like spending all your savings and then it's gone. And so that's the part that I think a lot of, it'll be an important part of our work, will be ensuring that that our constituents and the people that we're talking to understand that one-time money is just that. And it's a once in a lifetime money. And so and we'll talk about some of the things that we've been doing with that money over meetings as well. So with that, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to everybody on the screen, if we could go around and just introduce, who you are and what you're hoping to accomplish this evening. So why don't we start with you, Lynn? You happen to be on the top left for me. I'm sorry. I read like a book, Oh, your volume is down, Lynn.
Lynn Lyons, Board of Ed member. I like the fact that we've involved the community in our budget process. And I give Mr. Plavino a big thank you for that. And that's what I wanted to do. And I've wanted to do it for the last 6 years. So we've started to do it a couple years ago, and I appreciate it.
Thanks, Lynn. Dr. Lisi, you're in the next one.
Hi, everyone. Tom Lisi, Chief of Operations. Pleasure to be here with you this evening, and I'm looking forward to hearing your feedback and your interest in this process. So, good evening, everyone.
Nick.
Nick DeJalorme, prior board member, community member now. I'm glad to be back. I thank you for the invite. I worked on the budgets when I was a board member, and I'm glad I can continue to do that.
Great, thank you. Jerry Geithner.
Hello, I'm Jerry Geithner, Executive Director of Human Resources and Student Services. Just very happy to be here as part of this community conversation. So thank all of you for helping us.
Okay. Going left to right, Fallon.
Hi guys, Fallon Cooper, former board member, parent of 3 kiddos in the district. Just wanting to be here to help relay some of the things I'm hearing, from the community and other parents, and help out where I can.
Thank you. Tina.
Hi, I'm Tina Usepi. I'm a community member. I work for Oswego County Opportunities in our SCORE program, and I'm also one of the original members and still volunteering with Fulton Block Builders. So I'm looking forward to this as well and getting, information out to the community.
Thank you very much. Liz Stoddard.
Hello, everyone. Mom, community member, and principal. So I wear a few different hats, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to join the committee, but also just to work with all of you and get a better picture of that broader image of budget. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Liz. Donna Parkhurst.
Hello, Donna Parkhurst, high school principal. I'm looking forward to having conversations with community members. And as Tina said, it's always great to make sure we have a mutual understanding of all of our roles and how we can help one another, help our stakeholders understand our budget. So looking forward to the process.
Thank you. You'll see Tim Wilson on there. Tim is our technology extraordinaire. We are live streaming. So Tim, you'll see his icon all the time. He's the man behind the screens. So thank you, Tim, for helping us out tonight. Carrie Phillips.
Hello, everybody. I am Carrie Phillips, the president of the Fulton Teachers Association, also a former product of the Fulton City School District. Went to school here myself. My son is in college now, so he's a product of the Fulton City School District. So I'm pretty invested in our community. And of course, I'm a teacher here now, and I look forward to the process. I was part of this as well last year, and I found it to be very valuable to have community input as we kind of muddle our way through our budget process. So thank you for those of you that are volunteering your time.
Thanks, Carrie. Kathy Nichols.
Good evening, everyone. I'm the school business administrator, so I've been working with the budget for the last 15 years, and I'm just looking forward to hearing everybody's ideas and input and getting it done.
Thanks, Kathy. Becky Devendorf. How are you, Becky? How are you?
Good. How are you, Mr. Palvino?
Good.
I'm Becky Devendorf, graduate of GRB, so are my kids. They're in college now. I work at Cayuga Community College, so working in higher ed. We've been lucky to have a big influx of COVID money, as has the district. I'm well aware of the challenges that higher ed and local districts will have when the COVID money runs out. So hopefully we can work together and figure out what's going to happen when that day comes.
Thanks, Becky. Caroline.
Hi, everyone. My name is Caroline Chatterton. I'm the director of the Fulton Public Library. I'm really pleased to be part of this committee. I'm really interested in learning about the process and how the library can help.
Wonderful. Thank you, Caroline. Spencer.
Hey, Spencer Horton. Just a parent of 2 kids in the district. And I was a part of the budget committee last year, so nice to be a part of it again.
All right. Thank you, Spencer. Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jess Papalardo. I'm a board member, also mom in the community. I work in the business office in Oswego, so I'm hoping that some of that knowledge will help come over into our budget here. And just overall goal is to just provide some transparency with the budget process in our community. And thank you all for being here and looking forward to working with everyone.
Thanks, Jess. Zach.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Mentor. I am here as a community member. I was part of this group last year, and I'm pleased to be able to participate again this year. I have actually 2 kids in the City of Fulton School District. I'll have my third one will be in kindergarten next year. So next year I'll have all 3 of them in the district. I live here in Fulton, and I own a Mentor ambulance service. I've been in Fulton my whole life and graduated from G. Ray Bodley. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Zach. Dan Carroll. Dan, can you hear us? Oh, your volume's not on.
Oh, sorry about that. Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Carroll, Executive Director of Instruction and Achievement.
Thanks, Dan. Alrighty. So I just want to once again thank everybody for participating in this group. And one of the things that I would ask is, if you have questions or you're hearing about questions in the community, let us hear about them. It's funny. Somebody called me the other day. They said, I just wanted to call you because you don't ever hear the good stuff. I said, well, that's great. And they started to share, not only just kind of, just all the things that are going on as far as the political climate and all that kind of stuff. But they also shared some of the experiences that the kids are having in school around social emotional learning and around some of the reading programs. It was really a neat call, and it was out of the blue. So there's a lot of things going on in the community that we often don't hear about it. Like, we need to hear about the good things going on because we want to bolster those and build on those things. And at the same time, we know there are areas for growth and development, and we need to hear about those. And a good, transparent, open process allows us to develop a budget that is really balanced. So I'm going to walk us through kind of an opening kind of slide presentation this evening, and really provide a base kind of foundation of information. So those of you, I'm Brian. And then if you have questions, just put it right out there. This is a real open dialogue, and we're going to go from there. So let me see if I can get us.
I have a question, Brian.
Sure.
The 14 million of federal aid, is that the same 14 million that we have to stretch out through 2024?
That is correct. There is, yes, the CRRSA is 4 million and change, and the ARP, which is the American Rescue Plan, is 10 million. The CRRSA looks like it goes through 23, and the ARP goes through 24.
Thank you.
Yep. So it's about stretching it, and it's about providing the foundation to grow on. So, we bought some things like a lot of desks for the high school, which are getting rave reviews from the feedback we're getting from the kids. If you haven't seen them, they go up and down, they can stand, they can sit, but more importantly, you can actually put your Chromebook and a book on the same desk. It's a novel concept. So it's a great opportunity for kids and provides that flexibility. Those are desks that'll be around for a long time. That's a purchase that will last us for a while. Whereas, there's other funds that are going towards social emotional learning. For example, we've got restorative specialists in each of our schools now. We have a number of different community partners, and it's going to be interesting over the next 2 years, really prioritizing of those priorities and go from there. So a lot of good stuff, and I just wanted to kind of really bring those kinds of things up. That gets back to sustainability and capacity. What are those good things? What are those areas for growth? So here we go. So I'm going to look this way because my big screen's over here and I can't see over there. So once again, thank you for joining the committee. Really appreciate you being here this evening. So the budget committee, everything comes back to our strategic coherence plan here in Fulton. And, you know, when I remember first pitching the idea back in my second year, and we started dabbling with it, and then it really took root that summer. And I will tell you, through COVID, and I've been through a lot of these plans, these strategic plans over time, our plan actually was flexible enough, and it brought us through this pandemic. It's been a really amazing kind of a plan. It's been very workable, and it's helped us grow, and every question that we ask about the budget always comes back to our plan. Does it come back to our plan? And you'll hear more about our plan this evening, and there's some document links that I think may be helpful that we've shared at our recent board meetings as well. So everything comes back to us helping accomplish our vision, our mission, our beliefs, and our guiding principles. We're going to go over the budget committee role and purpose. The review of budget development process. There's a video that's that you can click on here as part of the presentation. It's about 2 minutes. It's just a really general overview. You know, just a general overview of budget processes. It's not specific to Fulton, but it's a great little reference for 2 minutes. Going to show you the budget policies, just so you're aware of the policies that we work within here in the Fulton City School District. The budget calendar, I'll reference that to show you just kind of where we're going throughout this entire process and what's the culminating day in May. A budget format, what a 3-part budget looks like, and then the budget revenues. And I already actually began with that because that's a really exciting place to be, a very different place. When we started the budget committee about a year and a half ago now, what we were looking at was a governor telling us school districts may be looking at 20% reductions. And that's where we started. That was actually where we began to poise ourselves to and then in the end, we ended up coming out relatively unscathed as far as programs. We kind of made it through, and then we got the shot in the arm of the CRRSA and then the ARP, which brought us back around. The budget parameters were established by the Board of Education just this in January. And then the next steps, what questions do you have, insights, what thoughts do you have, what questions do you have to come back at our next meeting? So our mission and our vision, and I won't read them, I'll give you just a minute to look at them, but everything that we do comes back. Is this initiative going to help us achieve our vision, our mission here in the Fulton City School District? Is this initiative going to get us where we need to go? Is this work that we're going on going to help us accomplish what we need to do? And so this has been, and what we'll do is this plan is in its 4th year. We will start revisions. It goes through the 23-24 school year. So we'll begin revisions next summer, late spring, early summer, and we'll start freshening it up and saying, all right, what do we need to put in place for the next 3 to 5 years? The next slide is our beliefs and our guiding principles. I'll give you a minute to take a look at those. Our guiding principles have actually been a part of the district. They were here before I arrived, and they've continued to be good reminders as to what we're supposed to be doing here in Fulton. So they've withstood the test of time. And number 4, I'll just draw attention to that, really is a big part of this committee and the Board of Education's work is around fiscally responsible work. And doing everything that we do to be fiscally responsible and stretching every dollar that we have here in Fulton. So the budget committee role and purpose is to provide the superintendent and the senior leadership team the development of the budget that will present it to the Board of Education. We do budget updates at every single Board of Education meeting. So, and we are live streaming those. And even when we return in person, we will also those will continue live stream. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback about that. The committee's role is advisory, with the ultimate decisions of what is contained in the budget recommendations being that of the superintendent to the board. The committee members will bring their perspectives from the community, and this is really important for consideration as various areas of the budget are being developed, there are so many connections and so many things that you're seeing that may help us really develop some of the ideas that we have, some of the things that are in our plans, and make them even better and stronger for our kids. The committee input and discussions will be shared with the Board of Ed. And it's really nice that this idea actually came up the other night. I hadn't thought about live streaming, and I think it's terrific. It's an opportunity for the public to once again listen in and watch and understand what our process looks like. And then these notes will be shared with committee members and posted on the district website. So we do have a budget page. We've already started updating that with this year's budget information. And we'll also have an ongoing FAQ, there's also a forum on that website for anybody in the public to be able to, if they have any question, comment whatsoever that comes in, and then we will place those responses on the FAQ. And we'll also, we provide responses at the board meetings as well. So we actually talk about them publicly, any additions to the FAQ as well. And I won't read this slide, go through, but it really begins with highlights the processes open to community input. And it makes sure that input is really driving all of our work and making sure that there's a strong understanding. Our public trusts us with their most valuable asset, and that's our kids and our resources. And I truly believe that a strong school system brings people into our community. And our population, you'll see that at our next meeting, we'll share that. But over time, I believe, going back, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Lisi, I believe when we looked at it this morning, it was about 583 less students since 2011-12. And you think about that. Let me quantify that for you. The size of, and I know this because I put the numbers in the COVID system today, 515 kids at Granby. We've had over the size of an elementary school leave our district over a 10-year period. And you start to look at it, and we've averaged about 30 to 50 less a year here. But you put that across 13 grade levels, pre-K or kindergarten through 12, pre-K through 12, you start to see that. And so they're no grade level losing numbers. It's more spattering it through. But what I want to do is, I believe that, I mentioned some of the offerings that we're having at the high school, the drone certification programs, the early college high schools, all of the work we're doing around work readiness and work keys. And then at the early end, all of the social, emotional, and all of the work that we're doing, and all of the work that we're doing in early literacy. My history of watching education, this is my 32nd year, families want to be at the strongest schools in the system. And so I figure the goal should be the strongest in the county, and then we're going to go after the region. So, there's great things going on here. I listen to our kids and all the things they participate in at the National Honor Society, for example, just this week, last night. It's amazing what our kids are partaking in and what they're participating academically, as well as out in our community. So there's something very special going on here. So those are the reasons why we have the budget committee. It really comes down to one thing and one thing only. It's every student, every day. So coherence is something that I talk about, and I think it's important for the budget committee to really be aware of. It's really about creating a collective shared understanding about what it takes to create a high achieving district. And what's interesting is, in more meetings and more meetings, you find we're on the wheel here. You'll find that we're focusing the direction. We're very targeted about what we're doing and how it comes back to our plan. We develop a collaborative culture. We really are trying to make sure that people understand, different stakeholders, that kids understand what we're doing, our staff, our students, our parents, and our community members. And then we deepen our learning. And we've been doing a lot of work ensuring that, for example, I've mentioned early literacy a number of times. We really invested in the language essentials of teaching, reading, and spelling. And what's happened is, over time, nationally, you're seeing whole states training all of their outgoing teachers, outgoing out of colleges, in letters training, because it is state-of-the-art science of reading. We started that 2 years ago. And that actually began here in Fulton. And there's a collaborative, all 9 districts now. And so we were really a big part of that. More importantly, we thought about, we have a lot of kids that we share between districts. And so what we felt was, if we had consistent early literacy programs, we may be able to impact those kids that because of mobility concerns, they may have to move or something, they go between districts or whatever the case may be. We're finding that the consistency is going to create less transition issues for those kids. And so it was kind of the idea behind that. So, and then the final part is that securing accountability internally, which is all of us asking questions, asking, is this working? And then the external accountability hopefully takes care of itself, which is all the state tests and state measures and things like that. So it's really things, you can see I get a bit passionate about it. I really believe if we can have everybody on the same page and really understanding, creating that collective commitment, some great things can happen for us. This slide just overviews each of the strategic intents. There are 6 parts of our strategic coherence plan, and you'll see in a couple minutes there's a pie graph. You can actually see where we drive money, the federal monies in particular, to each of these areas. But our areas are leadership, literacy, instruction, social, emotional, developmental health, family engagement, and innovation. So those are our 6 areas, and they really align perfectly for everything that goes on in a school district. A new feature, so when you're out playing and taking a look at things, these are the budget parameters that the board has adopted for this school year. And what's interesting, they're very consistent. They align with our plan. And if you click, and I'm going to try this, so if it goes off, we'll see. But so if you click on these, you can actually, it will take you, hopefully, to each of the presentations that we're doing for the board. So for example, on this first one, this is our strategic coherence plan focus of leadership. And we began our budget cycle really wanting to spend more time this year. So in November, right before Thanksgiving, we actually did a presentation on leadership. So, and you can review this at your leisure, but it's a great resource. You'll see it talks about the coherence, it talks about our vision and mission, but then it actually shows you by the stimulus funds, and this is out of the 14 million. So if you go here, it says for innovation, 36% of those funds went there, or 8%, I'm sorry, in the leadership. I'm looking at innovation, I apologize. 905,000 right here was allocated towards the leadership area, or $905,000, or 8% of the federal monies. What did we do in there? We did our COVID contingency planning. That was all of our school supplies, barriers, remote learning, all of those kinds of things. Fund costs around the public employer health, or PPE, all of those kinds of things. Our instructional support frameworks that we've put in place, and our professional development is in this area as well. So that gives you an example. And then you can always click down through and you can actually see where it connects to our plan. So this was our instructional framework, and this is what it is, and this is the actual work. So this is all of our frameworks for supporting kids. So I wanted to just share that. And I'll see if it'll let me back out of here. This ought to be interesting. Normally I'm the one where the technology doesn't work. So that works. So are there any questions so far? I'm chattering away. So that's a great resource for you. That's a very different process. Last year, you would have had to go find that document. So what we're doing is we're trying to link things together so that ease of access, you can just link and say, gee, I want to find out what the district's doing with our federal funds in the area of leadership. Any questions or thoughts? Practicing my pausing. I'm not good at that. I get too excited about this. Anyway. So for each one of these areas, you'll see, so under leadership, cost-effective education, tax rate stability, so on and so forth. The next area, literacy, if you click there, it would take you to the literacy presentation that was done in our multi-tiered systems of supports. So that's for kids for all kids, 100% of kids. Then you've got 20% or 15% of the kids that may be really struggling. This is an ideal world. 15 would be at tier 2, and then 5% would be at tier 3, those kids that have the most intensives. So obviously that's our goal, is to have a pyramid that looks no less than that. So that's the idea behind our multi-tiered, but I don't want to go into those this evening, but that's literacy. The next area is the area of instruction. So this is all about strong instructional programs, responsive to students and teachers' post-pandemic needs. We added that because we're still addressing that. and we're still learning about what are the effects of the pandemic. And we're seeing that. We're seeing something as simple as if four of us were at a table and we were talking and just listening to one another and learning from one another. Say I was reading a passage and, you know, one of you was listening and then somebody was giving me feedback or asking me questions. That's a part of the learning process. There's no question that just that contact time and being and listening to repetition of teachers giving feedback to kids giving feedback to one another, sharing what they're learning, that's an area definitely where the pandemic impacted. And who would think that? But definitely an area of simple, but definitely an area. Social, emotional, developmental health. We just did that one, right? We didn't link it yet. I think we just did that one on Tuesday, this past Tuesday. We need to link that in for social, emotional, and all the work that we're doing there. So Dr. Lisi and Ms. Geithner, make sure you remind me and Ms. Nichols. We need to make sure that link gets linked on this one. Family engagement will be coming up, not at this meeting, but at the next meeting after this. And then we did innovation earlier this in one of our presentations. And that's all about our commitment to our digital learning initiatives, effective use of systems to make sure that we are efficiently not only doing things in the classroom and using things and using them as instructional tools, all the different forms of technology, but also that we're using systems to run the district. So whether it's our business systems, our human resource systems, making sure that we're maximizing their use and also coherently making sure that the connections, for example, between the budget office and the HR office are as connected and as seamless as possible. And those are the kinds of things that we're working on. And then for our family engagement, a big area has been around our communication systems. And, you know, a number of you can always get better, Brian. And, you know, and we are. I mean, when you look, and I do take a look at other districts, we're right up there as far as the different ways we provide communication, but there are always better ways. And I'm reminded every day when I think we're doing something good, I'll be reminded, Brian, could have done it this way too. And I think that's important because that's what keeps us on our toes and keeps us sharp, making sure that all members of our community are getting access to information. So that's a big part of our family engagement aspect as well. So things that you'll see just for your reference, and I know they were in the board docs and available. You'll have, if this will pop on there, we'll see if it'll, let me see here, if it'll let me change my tab. So I'm not sure it's going to. You've got, let's see here. You've got in your package, you have all the budget policies. There are 8 policies there. And they're really the ones that we reference for the budget process here in Fulton. Let me see if I do. I'm going to try something different here. Let me see if I can go here, stop presenting, and I'm going to try again here because I really want to show you the documents just so you have them. Let's see here. So for fiscal management, there we go. So for fiscal management, those of you that enjoy policy, there's in there you'll find policy 6000, which is our fiscal management goals. You'll have our budget planning 6110. Some of these are in the process, so we need to update. We will. So those are 12s. There's some older ones here. Budget deadlines and schedules. Ms. Perry, I think we know which budget set which set we should go after for policies next. Let's go for this one. That'll be fun. Determination of budget priorities. And again, we look at them every year. They really haven't changed. They're very consistent, but we should bring them into the 21st century as far as 2021 rather. Next one is dissemination of budget. There's a process for that. And then you've got the budget hearing, which is in May. And our property tax report card, which actually will take place later this spring. That's a presentation to the board in alignment with a state requirement. And then our 6-day budget notice. That's a formal notice that's required by law. And that's it. So I wanted to share that with you. See if this will take me back. The budget timeline is also a document that you have. So as you see, I referenced earlier that we have been doing presentations on the strategic coherence plan. So on October 26th, we did innovation. On the 23rd of November, we did leadership. We developed the calendar that you're looking at right now. In November, we presented it to the board as the initial draft budget calendar. We bring it up through, you'll see as we move into January, we had our regular board meeting. We did the instruction already. On the 18th, we had a budget workshop. And we worked with the board, and those are the budget parameters that you saw this evening. We had a board meeting last night, or actually a week ago, rather, I'm sorry. And we did social, emotional, developmental health. Tonight, here we are, right here is our budget committee. We have a board meeting. Then what we'll do is you see every board meeting budget discussion occurs. So on the 8th and the 22nd of February, that's coming up. The tax levy limit will actually be highlighted on the 22nd as we have to turn in our tax levy. What's the outer limit? What's the just like it sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kath, but that's what that is. So that's the highest increase that you could have. So last year, I believe we were 4.08% was the tax limit that we could have assessed, and we ended up with a 0. And I'll show you a slide later as a piece of the information you have access to as part of the PowerPoint. And then you'll see our tentative next meeting will be March 1st, right here. So that's our budget committee. March 8th, board meeting again, public budget forum. We're going to be doing it at Parent University. And it would be really great if anybody is interested, especially from the budget committee. If you're interested, that's a Saturday. We always have the board is always normally a part of just open forum, coming, talking, other than budget. But I often do a budget presentation. So if any of you are interested or just want to be there that day, we're going to be doing that on March 19th. That's a Saturday. Normally it's Saturday morning between 9 and 1 at some point. Another board meeting in March, and then we fast forward into the end of March into April. You can see over here on the right, because there are people that are interested, like, gee, what are the dates if I'm interested in running for the board? School board petitions are available on March 29th, so that's right here. The nominating petitions are available. April 1st, the first legal notice, elections, things like that are posted. So there's some things over here on the right column that are just, good pieces of trivia and information that people sometimes are looking for. The city annual meeting, this is the annual meeting at the city BOCES where they present their administrative budget. And then if you look down here on the 25th, every district in the county, Oswego County, we all have a meeting on that night. So I believe that's a Monday, I think. And we all vote at the same time that same evening, and that's when we vote on accepting the budget for the city BOCES. So you'll see our goal for this committee, this is an important date, April 19th. That's when we want to present the final. Hopefully we'll be adopting the Board of Education will be adopting the 22-23 budget proposal that will be presented to our public. So that happens on April 19th. I always leave us a little bit of room in case something happens. This year with the funding more anticipated early on, which it is, hopefully we'll be tightening up and doing final types of polishing it up at the 19th and accepting that. And then we have our special board meeting the 25th to do the city BOCES. Our public budget forum is the May 3rd. That's required by law. I like to do them a little bit earlier. Some districts put them a little bit later in the possible window. I like to get the information out to the community so it's out there and people can ask questions. So we're at the front end of the window of time. So that's May 3rd at 6 p.m. And then we follow that up with the mail of the budget newsletter. Budget information is going out to the public. That's our annual newsletter that goes out. And then one final board meeting, which budget's already been on the agenda and whatnot. It's already been gone. It's gone to go onto the ballots and all that. And then the 18th is the 17th rather is the budget votes right here. And then on the next evening, we do a special board meeting. So any questions about that? It's a lot of information. It's the timeline. So if we go backwards, we start with May 17th and we work backwards right up to where we sit this evening. Okay. And then finally, we started this a number of years ago. Thank you, Ms. Lyons. This was a budget glossary for those of you, and let me see if I can make it any bigger here. How's this? I'm getting better at this. So you have an opportunity. So this is just what are all of the different types of different vocabulary that we run into over time. So appropriated fund balance and bonds and budgets and budget calendars and so on and so forth. And what we did is this has been a list that we just continue updating. There's star right here each year because there's a lot of information here. And I realized in our first and second budgets under me, we didn't have a budget glossary. So we started to develop this glossary. And I think it's been helpful over time. So that's available to you as well. I already talked about the budget revenues, and then I'll talk about fund balance and reserves in just a moment. So just to give you an idea, some references, just quick references. This is the current budget that we're in. We're in a $76 million budget right here, $76,230,000. If somebody said, gee, how much tax levy? Did they increase the taxes last year? Nope, we didn't. We had zero. We had a 0% tax levy last year. So if you went back to 2021, you would see the same number, 21,613,705. So we had no increase last year. We did take a little bit out of our savings last year, out of our reserves. We are doing extremely well with our reserves. I'll share that in just a minute, but we are at our 4%. We actually exceed our 4%, right just over. We're okay, but the law says 4%. So what that means is a number of years ago, let's go back to 16, 17, previous boards did an amazing job. They had to deal with 2008, 9, 10, which was the years when we really had some major issues in funding schools. And they used their reserves and fund balances, and it dropped significantly over time. And we were identified as a district that was moderate stressed as far as fiscal, which is not a list that you want to be on with the comptroller. And I will say my current board and all of the boards going back to 8, 9, 9, 10, and my predecessor, Mr. Lynch, worked very hard. And he provided me a nice little 500,000 nest egg in my first year when we were doing some things around technology. So that worked out really well, the way the funding fell into place. And then over the last 4 years, we finally were able to bring that number up to 100% in our funds and our reserves and our fund balance. So that's where you want to be in case you ever have any issues. So we're sitting well, but you can't always go over. So we also have to keep a very strong look at our reserves and our fund balance. You know, what we don't ever want to happen is we're way over, and then the comptroller comes in and says, wait a second, you have to figure out a way to get this down. And so what we want to be is at or as near at our balances, and that's exactly where we are right now. So thank you to our previous boards and superintendent for developing that over time. And last year represented right here a 3% increase, 3.3% increase from 2020 to 2021 to 21-22. So that's an average. At our board meeting, I believe on the 22nd, we'll be doing a roll forward budget. Roll forward budgets generally are 3%. So to give you an idea of what a budget looks like, just to see how it breaks down into its parts. So this one shows you, this is a 3-part budget. Program is everything instructional, everything that's in front of those kids and in our teachers' hands and inside those schools, that's program. And you'll see that's a big part of our budget, $57,200,000. It's right where it should be. It's heavy. It's about 75%. Capital funds is how do you keep the buildings running? You know, it's your heating. It's your you're fixing the plumbing, fixing the heat, all of just the cleaning of the buildings every day. All of that is part of your capital, your food services, so on and so forth. And then your administrative is all of those other costs of doing business and making sure we're running the district. And you'll see a pie graph here in just a moment. I'll get down to show you. This is a slide that I've used every year, and it's a great reference. Just so you understand, it starts off in 12-13, and it's got our budget was 62 million. The actual levy for taxes was 19,746,000. It was an increase of 368,000 over the previous year. So you can see from here to here was $368,000, or 1.9%. At the time, and this is the part that's interesting, this is the permissible over here. That board at that time could have raised taxes up to 3.1%. So just want to put that out there. So that's an example. And then I'm going to allow a question here in just a moment. But if you fast forward 10 years, so let's bring you down to here. This is our current budget right here, 76,230,000. Our tax levy is 21,613,000. So if you look over 9 years, we went from 19,746,000 to 21,613,000. So that's over time. And what's interesting is last year, this was the permissible, was 4.4%. So $880,000 was what was available to our district. And we did 0%, because that's what was the correct thing to do yet last year with everything that we had in place. So are there any questions? This is an interesting slide. I've been talking a lot of information here. So, and I always do that. So you just have to yell stop, and I will. This probably isn't as exciting for everybody. This is a really neat slide to me. So, but what it shows is we've been fiscally responsible. Our boards have increased taxes about 2.2 million over that time, and the opportunity was 3.5 million. What's interesting is our normal budget gap is $1 million. If you look over time, early in the budget process, we often have a 1.3 1.5 gap. It's just this natural, it's just there. So it's just something I've always noticed since I got here. If you want to know what red means, this was actually a year where the formula led to a negative tax cap. So we actually began saying that taxes would be decreased as a whole by $357,000. So this is our local share. It's another term that we'd use for local share. And then this slide, and we'll talk more about these in future meetings. So go from there. Becky, go ahead.
I do have a question. So the tax levy is what you need to collect in taxes to support the budget, correct?
Correct.
So,
local share. Yep.
Okay. So as the city seizes property and tears down property, once the city owns the property, does it come off the tax rolls, and how does that impact the tax levy?
It's a great question, and the answer is it does. The county has to maintain that we're whole, so we don't go down. What it does is it shifts the burden on, and Kathy or Dom, please chime in. It shifts the burden. So a great example is one of our ADIS, for example, and I've talked at public meetings about this, so I'll talk about it. They have a pilot, for example, and their pilot this year was, I think we were up to about $372,000. Well, ADIS, unfortunately, has had some problems with their business, and they have defaulted. And so the county's in the process. We're remaining whole, but that 370 got shifted across this, in our tax base, across everybody else's taxes. You see what I'm saying? So our number comes out to the 21,613, but houses coming off the tax rolls or businesses coming out affects the ability to have as many business or tax entities in the system. Kathy or Dom, is that correct, the way I described that? Does that make sense? I don't know if I lost Kathy or not.
No. If a property comes off the tax rolls, then, and we've already levied a dollar, the next year when we go to levy,
yep,
you're spreading the same levy across fewer properties. I think that's what you were basically saying.
Yep.
So
what we want, Becky, is everybody buying all the houses. We want our businesses to come in, be strong, and we want to bolster, like with the DRI. the downtown revitalization. We want every bit of that $10 million investment that came in from the state, and then all of the other monies that are there. We want that to flourish, because that will help our tax base here in the city of Fulton.
But Brian, those houses that are getting torn down already weren't paying taxes.
It
so it's
depends
not.
if they were owned by somebody, somebody had to be paying the tax. They should be going after it. If say there was a person who owned the property, if they defaulted and it went to the city, for example, then it's on the city's rolls. So that's correct. So we want to build new houses where the old ones were too. So, yeah. But this is something we watch very closely. The other piece, Fulton has a very high tax rate, and there'll be slides that you'll see down the road, but I believe we're around $57, $58 per thousand, and other districts. And that's a phenomenon that happens in small cities. And we'll go over that at a future meeting too. A lot of small cities that lost business, they lost industry, you'll see this happening. Whereas you go to, some other areas and their tax, they may have $1 million homes, but their taxes are $36 per thousand. And they would argue, well, my house is $1 million and I'm paying $36,000, $36 on 1,000, but we have $100,000 home and we're paying $58, $59 per thousand. So you look at that, and it's interesting. So it's something that we're very cognizant of, because I hear that often from our community that, well, you're making my taxes go up. So we're very cognizant of when we do that we have a strong rationale and we can really show this is why we're doing it and why this is important. Because as you can see, when you leave it on the table, you never get that opportunity again. And I think we've been very good here. 2 when there was a 3.1, a 1 when there was a 2, a 1 when there was a 3. But at those times, the community also was having some challenging times. So that's the balance of developing a budget that not only is fiscally responsible now for not only doing business, but also to our community, but also is it setting us up for the future to make sure that we can sustain and we have the capacity to do what we want to do for our kids. So there's that balance. We're always in the now, but we're also always looking forward. This slide has been updated, so you can see that our total change in fund balance is right here. I don't have the percentages. Kathy, I don't know if you know it off the top of your head. I believe is it just under 5%? But we have our fund balance here, and you can see over time. I guess that's what's important to see. We had a reserve fund balance of $6.5 million in 17, and we were at $10 million in June of 21. Our assigned fund balance we've maintained that pretty steadily. That's our unassigned. Also, we've added about $1 million over time, and our total fund balance has gone up just about $4 million. So we're fiscally strong right now compared to where we were, and you can see how we've grown over time. So in some ways, the CARES Act and some other kinds of things really helped us, but it also makes keeping your reserves and fund balances a little bit more of a challenge as well. So we have to really look at balancing those budgets, making sure that we have long-term funding.
Mr. Polvino, what is the recommendation of what percentage of your budget your fund balance should be?
Well, ideally, you'd love to balance your budget on your existing revenues that you have coming in, and you're not touching it at all. I mean, that's the best. I heard the governor talk about the other day. She was saying their goal is a 15% in their reserves and fund balance is good business. To have 15% in reserves, my argument is, then, Governor, why did it get vetoed that 6 and 8% wasn't good to school districts? That was actually a piece of legislation a year ago. So school districts do 4%. I think what I would say, Becky, is to keep things as close to our 4% at all times. Never dip it much below that 4%. Right now we are underspending the budget by a bit this current school year, and we do that at the second board meeting of the month. We do a presentation on the previous month where we are. So right now we're underspending. So we're also keeping an eye on that. So the idea is to keep us as whole here, but also making sure that if we're starting to go over, that we're pushing that back into the budget as well. So I don't know if there's a good number. I know the comptroller would tell us never to really go under like 3.2, 3.3% in that reserve, because then he likes to they like to put us on list then and say we're not fiscally responsible. So it's a challenge. 4% sounds like a great number, but it really is. It goes quickly. So it's a great question. Are there other questions? This is one of my favorite slides. I just like to put it out there every year. This has always lagged about 2 years. We should be getting 1920 pretty soon. This is on the New York State school report cards for every school district. And if you go into the fiscal supplement, this is actually in the fiscal supplements. And this is one where similar districts are other small city school districts that are similar fiscally across the state of New York. So this is a report generated by New York State. And you can see that Fulton, over time, we spend a little bit less per student general ed wise than our similar districts and all school districts in New York State. So we've been in this realm right along. We've kind of maintained this over time here in Fulton, at least since I've been here. It's been very consistent. And when you look back previously, it looked very much like this. And then in special education, and I think part of this, because I think we have some very strong programs here. We brought back, and I want to say it's probably 11, 12 years ago, we brought back our programs from BOCES. The Fulton City School District made that decision. So we have a lot of our special classes and special programs for students with disabilities here in our district. And so I think that actually helps with the costs to a certain extent. And so I think that's a piece of it. And I think also anytime you can have your kids in their own school buildings also is a huge impact on kids. So I think that's huge. We do send students to both. I think that's a piece of it. But we continue to watch that very closely because nationally, generally special education costs, and I'll put my old hat on, 9% was an annual increase in a budget for special education. And in my life, when I was a director, we averaged maybe 1% to 2%. We were pretty consistent with our programming in Syracuse. And I see that here. Ms. Adams does a very nice job managing and leading our special education programs. So we continue to watch that. And we're looking at this budget possibly to do a little bit of impact in the special education realm as we move forward through this budget process. It's an area where I think we should bolster it a little bit. Because we have kids with disabilities, kids that are English language learners. They bring, even on top of all of the different factors, they bring that additional factor to the table when we educate. So we just got to make sure that this gap didn't hit them even harder, and because that's what the research is showing nationally. So taking a good look at our special populations this year. I had mentioned earlier, this kind of tells you where our revenues go. So 68.5%. This is last year's budget. So that's our current budget that we're in, our $76,230,000. 68.5% is from state aid. So we're very dependent on state aid. We're 28.4% on local share. That's our local tax base. And then 3% is our pilots. It's our Medicaid funds. It's those ancillaries. So that's a very small piece of the pie. And then on the budget percentages, as far as expenditures, if you remember the 3-part budget that I shared with you, 75% goes to program. That's where it should be. And we've always been right around that 74, 75%. This is a target. When you talk about a target, 75% is a really good target for your instruction. That's where you want to be. And 14% is our capital and our debt. And we're going through capital projects, so that affects us a little bit here. But this is all of our running of the buildings and all of this. So this is a good chunk. And then our 10% is right for our admin and running the district and all of those other aspects. So we tend to be a pretty fiscally balanced, very consistent with what you see in other districts. And then things that we need to keep in mind this year. We have some contracts expiring this year. We have our teacher's contract as well as our, I believe it's food services. Is that correct, Ms. Geithner? I believe, yep. Our most expenses are predictable. like I mentioned, we know with contracts, we know that there are raises in there. We know that what the cost of business is. We know what the inflation factor is. We know all of those different things. I will tell you the cost of doing business in COVID is increased, with supply chain and trying to get things. The cost of doing business has gone up due to that. I saw an inflationary factor today when I was looking at something just over 4%. So right now, and then if you compared to just a year ago, I believe it was in the ones last year. So to see that just gives you an idea that the cost of business. So we have to keep an eye on that and what's going on there. Our health insurance, we are self-insured here in Fulton. We generally use an 8 to 9% estimator. I will say that right now we're under budget, which is good news. A number of years we've been under budget, but we had 1 year where it went over. So in the end, we've had our plan works very well for us here in Fulton. But when you're self-insured, you watch it on a very consistent basis. But we also have one of the best health programs or health policies around. It really does a great job for our members through thick and thin. It's very good. It's a very good plan, and it's been cost effective. That the balance. Great plan and cost effective, and that's a great thing to have. So hopefully that'll continue on. Our TRS, which is our teacher retirement system contributions, are estimated to increase less than 1%. ERS retirement is decreasing to 13%. I believe it was around 16. I think that's what it was, Kathy. I'm pretty good with the numbers, but I think that's what it was. So it's going down. That's the important piece. And then some other pieces just for when you're talking to, you're having a slice of pizza and you're talking to friends and family or whatever you're doing, a 1% budget increase, it's approximately $762,000. So think about that. I said, it takes the cost of doing business is generally around 3%. I said the inflation factor is around 4 right now. So, so that's right around that 2.1 million. You throw in 1.6, you got a gap of 500. So kind of that way, it's a very simple way of looking at a 1% in the tax levy. It's always a good number to keep in the back of our minds. 1% is $216,000 more dollars, and vice versa. Minus 1% would be minus 216. So it kind of gives you an idea of what that is. But it's a great way just to give you a quantifiable number for discussion purposes. New York State contributes approximately 68.5% of our budget. You saw that. Right now, we don't know the status of all our Title I grants. So our professional development grants, our instructional grants, special education tends to be pretty consistent. But until we see the dollars come in, you don't know what they are. So those are our title federal funds that are coming in. And they come in late in the spring, actually after the budget process. And then COVID funding is temporary. And I think that's an important piece to remind ourselves. Foundation aid is the big number. That's the number that increased for us 4.5% this year, or almost $2 million. That's a big chunk of the 68.5%. The potential reductions, and this isn't going to happen, which is great news. Combined aids, the previous governor, there are 11 aids like transportation, BOCES aid, building aid, so on and so forth. He wanted to combine all those. Well, for us, being one of the poorest districts, our combined wealth ratio is 0.33. 1 would be average. So we're 0.33. Only Syracuse City and Hannibal have a lower wealth ratio than we do, and they are 3.31, or yeah, I think 0.31 rather, and 0.313 or something like that. So we're just above them. And so for us, we get a lot of reimbursements. We get high rates back. And so we don't want them combined. And so that's a good news. Property assessments, Becky alluded to that a little bit earlier, just what's available out there. I am curious. I know they were looking at the home values here in the community, and I haven't seen the outcomes of that. So I know that weren't they doing a redistricting here in Fulton and looking at property values and assessments, right? Weren't they doing that? Yeah. And I didn't want any part of that. So I think it's not where we belong. So that was in the realm of the city. And then the equalization rates, we'll talk about at a future meeting. These are other mandates. There are mandates that school districts have, things that we have to do that aren't paid for, but we have to do. Local and regional economic picture, obviously inflationary, We have businesses that, we're getting stronger, but there are still businesses leaving. So there's a balance. Proud of the fact that we're no designation by the comptroller, always a good thing. We've stayed at or below the tax levy threshold for 10 years. You saw that in the document. The state formula is better than it's ever been for a small city. So we're halfway to being 100%. We're 90. We got 4.5% this year. So that pushes us up right about 95.5% of our funding. So next year, per the legislature, we're supposed to get that other 4.5%. So we kind of can depend on somewhere around that $2 million increase again next year. Then hopefully they're going to go into that formula and really fix it the way it should be. So that's a lot of information. I know that Nick asked the question earlier. Are there any questions to that point? And then I'll talk about the federal funds just briefly.
I do have one question. When you mentioned transportation,
yep.
We do have that, I believe, $1 million transportation fine that Governor Hochul in October she vetoed a bill that would have wiped that out. But in the executive budget, there is something that says there's a proposal that would allow state ed to forgive any penalties attached to errors in the filing of late final cost reports for building aid or transportation contracts that occurred after 2013. So my question is, if that proposal passes, would that wipe out the fine, and how would that impact the budget? Has that fine been put in the budget as a future liability?
So that's a great question, Becky, and a great catch. For the first time, for the last 4 years, we have gone for forgiveness bills every year, and Governor Cuomo would veto them. And he'd say, put it in the budget. And then and they were always passed by the Assembly and the Senate in New York State by 100% to 0. And then the governor would promptly veto them. And then what he would say is, this belongs in the budget. So our assemblymen and our senators put it in the budget. And and the budget office for New York State, lo and behold, it would be gone when the final budget came out. So the Fulton City School District, knock on wood, has never been garnished for those monies. We have received full funding as anticipated every year, Becky. Other districts, because I've reached out to and I've made some friends across the state, their districts were actually garnished. So for example, if you recall, I believe it was about 2 years ago, one of the districts to our south in Onondaga County got a $20 million forgiveness on their capital improvement project because they didn't file literally boxes of paper, not a single piece of paper, but boxes of paper, because I'm signing it and I know how much paper there is a capital project. And so they got forgiven about $2 million a year because that they had never been paid. So that's where the money comes in. We've never been garnished. And every year the runs come out for the state aid, and I take a deep breath and I look, and it has not been garnished. And then Kathy Nichols knows that I run down there, and I'll ask, so we got our state aid funding come in, anything missing? And so far, so good. We've never had that happen. What I had done, and one of the reasons why that, fund balance probably is up a little bit, we actually, my plan was, how do you raise $1,600,000 in a school district? Well, you move your district offices over to the junior high, and you rent out to the tune of almost $200,000 a year to BOCES because they were in need. So if you take $200,000 a year, and then now we're in our 4th year, that's about $800,000 more in revenues. That was the original plan in the back of my mind. So I'm glad we're renting it to them. It provides great space, but that was one of the original plans, coupled with any, reserves or fund balance. So that was the idea behind that. So right now, Becky, if that goes through, we will be extremely happy. And here's the good news. The governor and her people put that in the budget for the first time. So I doubt she's going to pull it out because they put it in. And thank you to NISBA, which is the School Boards Association, and NISCUS, and our assemblyman and our senator, who have pushed this and pushed this. And finally, we have a governor who listened and placed it in there. So for Fulton, it really doesn't cost the state anything because we've never been garnished. We were funded based on our actual expenditures, which is exactly what you should be funded on, just like everybody else. So that was a great point. It's one that I should have brought up. So that's great. Thank you. Other questions? You probably didn't know anybody could talk about budget for an hour straight, huh? I'm sorry. So just a couple other figures for you, just for your background. The CRS is the CRRSS is the Corona Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations, or CRISA. CRISA came out of this came out of the Republican presidency. So this money was allocated earlier. The CARES Act was as well. And then, so this is $4,149,000. You see it was reverted back to March 13th of 2020. We were able not to use, we used the CARES Act in 20. We did not use any of this CRISA or the American Rescue Plan for the 2019-20 school year. So we were different than some districts. We did not do that. We're not going to go back and do that. So our allocations are really for 2021, 21, 22. That's how we're allocating, and we've utilized those funds. So the CRISA runs out September 20 this year, the 20. So all of the monies that we've been spending this year really go toward CRISA. We're really trying to take it there because that's the money that starts to dry up first, starts to come to fruition. So that's a one-time allocation. I go to the next slide. This came under the next group. Once again, they retroed it back to March of 20. Didn't go back that far. But this goes to September 20th or September of 24. It says possible. We're anticipating, originally they put 23 on this one, but now it says 24. So we're hoping that they maintain that. You know, one of the biggest concerns I always have with federal funds is, will they come? They've been promised, they've been allocated, we've been approved, all of those. But what they don't do is they don't send you a check for $10 million. It's not the way it works. And so that's always a concern. Not that I'm a pessimist, but I'm conservative. And, you know, until the money's in the coffers, I don't believe it. And so we're very careful in monitoring these numbers very clearly and closely to make sure that, you know, at any given point, that's why buying desks is much, you know, easier than looking at, if you buy, you know, if you purchase positions, you're dealing with people, and that's what really throws things off. So there's a balance there. So the federal stimulus was $10,200,000. This was the American Rescue Plan. They took $700,000 and they called it required learning loss. So take 10.2 minus it, takes it to $9.5 million. We have not, then you had to put in for separate grants. So we put in 3 separate grants of $500,000, $100,000, and $100,000 towards learning loss. And we have not received the approvals yet, but we're hearing other districts haven't either. But we're hoping all this gets locked in very soon. It's just part of the process. So those are the one time. So you got 4,000,001 and 10.2, and that gives you the total of what we have in stimulus. And just to give you an easy reference, how we're using our COVID funds: 8% to leadership, 9% to literacy, 22% to instruction. Our social emotional learning, this was an area where we clearly heard from our families, from our staff, we needed to bolster our social emotional learning as kids returned and came back to full days. So you notice this is where we put 1/5 of our resources fell in the social emotional developmental health. Couple that with instruction, that's 43%. You add literacy, over 52% is just around literacy and social emotional, exactly where it belongs. 6% is in innovation. So this is when I mentioned desks and HVACs and all this kind of thing. This falls in innovation. So this is in this realm. Our leadership is in the area of our PPE, all those kinds of things. And then a smaller piece of the pie is really around family engagement, because it's really around communication, opportunities, things like that. Questions?
Brian, are we able to communicate to our community and our families a little bit better what those COVID funds are actually being spent on? There is a lot of misinformation in the community about what we're doing with that money.
Yeah.
You know, even things I'm hearing about are well, the money went to do the parking lots and that misinformation. Clearly,
Yep.
it's the capital improvement plan, separate funds.
Yep.
Are we looking into any way to clarify that for our community members?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Fallon. I think it's one of the things is how can we tell the story of the federal funds? We've been talking about it as a team. How do we at every board meeting keep putting it out there? But more importantly, we don't have a lot of people that I think go to our website and look for the information. It's how do we provide opportunities to share? Because is it forums? I mean, every time I get a chance to talk, I do. But you're right. The information is there. I'm not sure that it's in a way where families are really paying attention to it. Like if your kids are in some of the programs, then you're like, oh yeah, my student is in this. Oh yeah, I know that's what it's for. But if you're not in those pieces are not being impacted, like Peaceful Schools is an example of social emotional learning, and Jerry can chime in. This falls in her domain. But we started hearing as early as late September, Peaceful Schools is amazing. Yet the number of parents that I've talked to, they don't really know what that is. We've talked about it, and then I did talk to a parent whose child is in it, and they knew they were going to like small groups and they were doing some other types of sessions and opportunities. But you're right. How do we bolster that?
I think
and even how those funds, sorry, Lynn, 1 second. And even how those funds are distributed. I know a lot of our community members think that we do already have those funds sitting in the bank, that we're distributing, and to let them know we don't have those funds. We're still applying for grants and items.
Yep.
There's just a lot of misinformation.
There is, and I think what we need to do, and sorry to interrupt, is that at each board member meeting, we need to put in layman's terms exactly what those funds are for, and not that they're not for all the other things that you just said, but exactly for specific things. And I know we've said it before, but I think it needs to be reiterated constantly.
And Mrs. Lyons, one of the other big pieces of misinformation that I keep seeing is that the district is getting COVID money, and that's why they won't unmask the children, because they would lose money if we drop the mask mandate. So there's so much misinformation out there.
And I totally agree with you. And I wish I could just say to everybody, please go to the correct site and see exactly what's going on, instead of all this information that people are falsely presenting. I just wish we could have that happen, but it won't. So I think Brian tries every board meeting just to let everybody know that the mask mandate is not the school district. He says it every meeting.
Yep.
So I got to give him props for that one.
Yeah, and all 50 states got this money. American Rescue Plan, CRISA, all 50 states. Doesn't matter if you're red, blue, green, whatever. It didn't matter. Every state got these federal funds. So it's not tied to masks based on what you see across the country. It's not tied to certain things around vaccines, right? This was money that was pumped into school districts to try to close the gaps. And that, I wish we could put it in our coffers, and I wish we could have it over 10 years. And that's the hard part is trying to do, but you're right. I talked to a parent the other day, and she was adamant that it was because of the masks, and she was going to send me an article, and I haven't got it yet. I would love to see it, because I told her, I said, I really would love to see the information that you're getting so that I can put better information out into the community, so we can better understand what's going on with these funds. It's a great point. This is why we're having a budget committee. This is what we need to hear. And you know me, I'm writing it all down in my book here. So,
well, I don't know if we have anybody from the press here tonight, but that might be a good thing to have them put it out there correctly.
Yep. Yeah, we have a new reporter that's actually doing the education aspect now. So perhaps he'd be interested.
Even if we do something in the family newsletter, a breakdown, or at Parent University, where people can come and attend workshops and do a more in-depth talk about what exactly that money is going for, what we're required to do with that money, and what it doesn't go for, would even be some things that we could do better. But I agree, Lynn, I think even the press doing an article, something to help combat some of this miscommunication. Or, Brian, my favorite is your videos. I love seeing those videos of you pop up.
I know you do. Maybe it's a federal funding, all the things we're doing, and maybe actually pictures of kids in the resources, so people actually put a picture with the words.
I know, but don't get too wordy.
Maybe you need to do a fact versus fiction column.
Yep.
There you go. That sounds
I
workable.
was just going to say that, Becky, the frequently asked questions or myth versus fact, something short, sweet, you know what I mean? That we would all be able to answer too, and have that information.
Yep. Great
I
ideas.
agree. I do think you need to be real strategic about where it goes. I know, my family's real good about reading the newsletters, but I think just a lot of effort and thought has to go into how do you truly reach these people, because you can put all the best information together, but I hear those rumors as a community member, and I don't have the right answer, but I do think you're never going to catch them all, but really be real strategic about getting as much of that information to the right place as possible.
Okay. Great ideas. I'm writing furiously. So, back when, what did we do? I think we made posters and we hung them in all of the, Gene probably would remember. We went to doctor's offices. We hung them around. It had key information. I wonder if we had like a key information posters that we could hang around the city, just a bulleted list. Here's the things that we're doing with the federal funds. Just make something very simple. Because I still have, I actually walked in to get my laundry. That's where I was. I went over to get my dry cleaning, and I walked in and I was talking, and there was our poster from like a year or two before. There it was. And I was like, oh. And so I was like, that's really helpful. So here I am standing here waiting just to pick up my suit, and there was the information right there. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, Brian, I definitely think we could easily do posters through city. Here's a unique idea as well. If Brian were to do a quick video message, and then reference our community budget committee, we could have a few brave volunteers from this committee to come in and it would be scripted, but do a quick, I'm a member of the Fulton City School District Budget Committee, and do a quick video clip, and maybe one a week from now until the budget vote. It's just a unique idea.
Yeah. Yep.
Can we send anything out in the report cards that are going to be going out?
How do they get stuffed? I don't know how that works, Donna. As far as, do they get stuffed up at city? Don't they? They used to.
No, they're piled up on my counter right now.
And stuff.
Yeah, they come out Thursday, so I don't know if we'll have time for this one.
Probably too quick a time around, but
it might be. We came up with something by
it's
tomorrow.
a good idea, though. I got it written down.
It does. Do any of the medias that do they have videos that they will play? I know, I have to tell you, a lot of people tell me they go to Oswego Daily News and read everything that's going on there. So I know that's a good place maybe we could do for, I don't know. I just think it's really important. I think Becky hit the nail on the head that so many people have wrong ideas on what we're spending the money on.
Yep, the videos are concise enough. Let's face it, a lot of people go to Facebook, but all of our schools have a Facebook page. So I know they're getting viewed more and more, but if we had I love Donna's idea, getting a few people from the team, and we had a series of short videos, bet you they'd be viewed.
Dom, I think you and I could do a 1-minute tour of our some of our equipment in our technology classrooms.
We might even take 1 minute and 15 seconds. Sounds great.
Go on the beat.
I was also thinking, Mrs. Stoddard, an old video from Volney popped up in my memories yesterday of the students explaining standard-based grading. Do you remember that video? It was pre your time, but it also might be an effective strategy if we could have students share some examples of how the COVID stimulus funds are being used. That was really engaging and cute format. They were doing a late night talk show host format, top 10 list. It was very good.
I think, as you talk, one of the things that, I don't know if you saw, Commissioner Rosa made a statement today. Basically, it was basically, we need to start respecting one another and kindness. And that was kind of the theme of it. Because I was looking to see, I thought it was going to be about masks. So I was looking, and it's not what it was about. But it was really about respecting one another. And maybe, as you're sharing these ideas and strategies, think about the fact that the misnomers are what are fueling some of the controversy or the misinformation out there. And they pop things on Facebook, or they make statements that aren't true. And I mean, as much as I've talked tonight, parents, when they email me, have learned that I will actually call them and not email them, because I prefer to talk. And it's interesting, the misinformation, and as we're talking, I learn more about what their experience is. And I've learned a lot from them reciprocating. And I think that's something that's really important. And I think maybe doing vignettes and things like that would help our community say, you know what, make the schools more transparent. Look what they're doing for our kids. And, regardless of what we believe or what we value, we all have our kids at the center of what our work is. I mean, that's why our schools exist, is our kids. So I think these are great ideas. I got 2 pages rolling here. So figure out with the team how we can make some of these things happen. Other ideas? Let's take a quick look here on the screen. Really went through everything. There was really only one step left, really. And the last slide was really really what we're talking about now is sustainability, capacity. How do we tell our story? And I think that's the hardest part, is telling our story. I mean, the budget, the numbers are going to look, I think they're better than they've ever been right now at this point. But more importantly, the way we tell our story during this budget process will affect the way that we experience schools over the next 2 to 3 years. Because there's a lot going on and schools are being put in a lot. And I think this is a time for us to make sure that people understand what's going on in our schools and all of the good things that are going on in the areas that we need to grow. I think it's important. And I think the other piece is, you got ears to the ground out there. What are you hearing that's going well that we got to make sure we keep in these budgets and fund it and expand? And what are the areas to say, why do you guys do this? Or what are you thinking about this? And think about either we grow it or, do we have to adjust something? And I think that's important too.
Well, I think we've made great strides over the years by publicly putting this out for anybody's input if they want to. You've got the streaming right now, so everything's on the table.
Yep. And the nice thing about it is they can watch it tomorrow or tonight or next weekend. That's the other piece, which is good about the video, because I think it allows for flexibility for families or community members to actually be able to see when they want to. And also, we're going to have that on the website, the Google Doc, where they'll just fill it out and it'll go right in, and we'll have the FAQ. So if any question that comes up, they can always ask it. And at the board meetings, we've always got clerk@fulton.cnyric.org. So that comes in, that actually goes directly to the board, and then they hand it to me and I answer the questions, and publicly, actually, most of the time publicly, and to the board, and definitely to the people. So, and if it's budget, it'll get added right to the FAQ. So, other questions or thoughts? We really covered the agenda. I think the charge, if anything, is just to reflect on all the stuff tonight. And the big thing is keep the word in mind, sustainability and capacity. We have an opportunity in this budget cycle and in the next one to really shape our future for the next 5 to 7 years, because we've got some funding that we can anticipate for the first time. And normally we're out kind of trying to plead our case that we need more funds. But right now we're in it's a nice place to start with in the budget. We can always use more, but at the same time, I think we're in a fiscally good place to start the budget process. Any other thoughts? We can draw to closure. Our next meeting would be March 1st. We'll send you information after board meetings. We'll send you any new budget information. And if I get articles or I see things, we'll send that out to the committee as well, so you'll get information. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out. Always feel free to call me. I should give you all my phone number. My office number is right on the website, but you're also welcome to call me on my cell. You can write it down, 315. We'll send it to you too, 315-341-4325. We'll have Jean send it to all of you as well. Again, some of these things you just, you have a question, is to give me a call. Sometimes it's just easier, right? So, alrighty, well, we can call it an evening. I don't have any other information. I gave you a ton of information. So as you work through it, those links are a lot of fun. We will add the social emotional developmental health one. Dom, make sure we add that to this presentation. So the link is there. Anybody on my team, anybody to add? Dom or Jerry or Kathy? Jean runs my life. She's right there in the middle. Thank you, Jean, for getting everybody here and set up tonight. Jean's right there in the center. Jean is our clerk to the board as well as my administrative assistant. So
it's a great group.
It is. I'm going to enjoy this. This brainstorm of ideas, it's got me pumped up. So I'm excited. Alrighty, well, have a great evening and stay warm, and hopefully we won't have too much snow in the next 2 days. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to working with you.
Good night.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.